What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. Today we're going to analyze some data from the Peoria Regional Championships to help us forecast the metagame for SLC and understand what decks really did well at Peoria so we can see what people might want to be playing for Salt Lake City Regional Championships next week. Before we get into all of that, shout out to my sponsors, PotownStore.com, PokemonCard.io, Beast Coast Pokemon, and CardTrooperGames.com. Also, Dragon Shield Sleeves, which I'm affiliated with. You can find links and coupon codes and all that kind of stuff in the description down below. And be sure to subscribe to this channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. So, let's take a look at all of this. What we'll be looking at here is the Peoria meta share. So there were 1,084 players at Peoria Regional Championships in the Masters Division. These are all of the deck archetypes that make up the 1,084 players. We'll see here that the count of players on Kyurem Palkia was 173. This is all according to RK9 Labs metagame analysis that they put out. And then the meta share percentage of that would be 15.96%. So essentially, round one, you had a 15.96% chance of playing somebody that was piloting a Kyurem deck, an 11% chance of playing against somebody piloting a Giratina Comfy deck, and so on and so forth. So Kyurem was significantly high. It was the most played deck. And then Giratina, Comfy, MUV Max, and Palkia and Teleon were all about the same, around that 10 plus or minus 1% range. Then in the next tier down, we have Lost Box Sablezard, Arceus Giratina, Reggie, and Zorark all being played around the same amount. From there on, we have Arceus Gujra V-Star and Arceus Other. And then we also have a couple of these decks which you might include in that next tier down of Other Lost Box, Arceus Inteleon, Dialga V-Star, Blissy Miltank, and then from there it's all 1% and lower. This column, column D, is the count of day 2 decks. So out of 173 Palkias in Kyurem Palkias in day 1, 13 of those decks made it into day 2. Out of 129 Giratinas in day 1, 10 of those made it into day 2. And then here we have the percentages of the day 2 meta. There were 117 players in day 2, so 13 Kyurem Palkias was 11.11% of the total day 2 population. We can take a lot from these numbers. So we know Kyurem Palkia is popular. We know Giratina decks are popular. We know Mew is popular. Palkia and Teleon's popular. Great. So we could focus on those top decks. But let's look at what decks actually made it into day 2. Well, 24 Palkias made it. 13 Kyurems made it. 13 Mew VMAX made it. Only 5 Lost Box. 15 Reggie. 10 Gujra. And then you'll start to see that I've color-coded some of these rows. So what exactly does that mean? That means we're going to be looking at the conversion rates. This is what percentage of people that played X deck made it into day 2. Well, out of 173 Kyurem Palkia, 13 of them made it into day 2 for a 7.51% success rate or conversion rate into the day 2 meta. The deck that's most popular is typically going to suffer in its conversion rate, so I wouldn't let you think that Kyurem Palkia is a bad deck. It's typically set up to fail in terms of conversion rate when a deck is this popular. More than 10% of the metagame, it's really hard for the deck to succeed at a rate higher than 10%. You'll also see Giratina and Mew. Mew now actually I would consider a winner in this scenario. It was 10% or higher, and it had a higher than 10% conversion rate. I'd say that's good. That's like above average. That's what we want to see, is more than 10% of the people that decided to play this deck made day 2. And again, it's going to be hard with a deck like Kyurem Palkia that almost 200 players are piloting, and those players are going to be from varying skill levels, so there's really not a lot you can put on the deck. I'd say 7.51% conversion rate is quite fine, especially considering that it ended up getting 3rd and 4th place. Next, with Giratina Comfy, I would explain this conversion rate that it's a very hard deck to play, and it's not optimized yet. So I think this success rate is fair for Giratina Comfy. Mew VMAX, a very strong deck. It was 10% of the meta in day 1, and it was 11% of the meta in day 2 with an 11% conversion rate. Very good. Palkia and Teleon, 100 in day 1, making up about 9% of the metagame, and 24 of it in day 2, with a 20% share of day 2 and a 24% success rate. Now, this 24% success rate is quite significant because Palkia and Teleon was 9% of the metagame and 100 people played it. That's a pretty good sample size. Now, what we don't know is how many of those players were what we would consider day 2 regulars, right? Maybe 24 of those Palkia and Teleons were the best players in the world, and that helped carry the deck into it. But we can also assume and know for sure that there were fantastic players playing Lost Box. There were fantastic players playing Giratina, fantastic players playing Kyurem. All of these top decks, Reggie and up, I would say guaranteed had a handful of great players on them. So we shouldn't take that into consideration here with the Palkia too much. It is a deck that top players tend to go towards because it has a lot of options and it has a lot of strategy that you can try to control throughout the game. But I think we should praise Palkia and Teleon for its high conversion rate and its high day 2 percentage. I think it did really well at this event. And it still earns that title of best deck in format, I think. Lost Box did not have much that great of a conversion rate. It was also not played a significant amount. It was played 6%. And then if you combine it with Lost Box Other, it goes up to about 8% or so. But Lost Box Sablezard did win the event, but it didn't have a great conversion rate. Very hard deck to play, very hard deck to build correctly for any given metagame. Arceus Giratina, actually not bad. 61 people played it, which is more than I expected, and 7 of them made day 2 for an 11% conversion rate. Reggie, which I think my top 2 plays for this event, power-wise, it's not top 2 plays. I wouldn't have played Reggie, but I think the 2 decks that were the most powerful going into this event were Reggie and Mew VMAX. Reggie had a fantastic conversion rate. 59 people played it, and 15 of them made day 2 for a 25% conversion rate. Now, for Reggie, I do know that this was top heavy with good players because good players deduced that this was a great meta call for the event because it was an inherently powerful deck that was being unchecked because people weren't respecting it enough, and it could just have a very good matchup spread and run through most of the decks if it set up well. So Reggie Gigas was a little bit weighted in its favor because of that it was top heavy with good players deciding to pile it because they could see that it was good for the metagame. But still it proved them right having a 25% conversion rate into day 2. And eight Reggies in top 32, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Now, Arceus Gujra, this is another one that I have in the dark blue here that we should look at. Arceus Gujra, only 31 people for less than 3% of the meta, so it's hard to really say that the sample size and the findings from it are significant. But out of 31, 10 of the people made day 2. 2 of those people made top 16. 32% conversion rate for Arceus Gujra players. That was quite substantial, in my opinion, and I think players are going to have their eyes on Arceus Gujra moving forward. Another one, Blissy Miltank, 13 players, 3 of them made day 2, 23% success rate. This doesn't really mean too much because only 13 people played it, right? But Blissy Miltank is popping off in online events. 3 people out of 13 made day 2, which is a good percentage. It's just not a great sample size of only 13 people playing it. And then Arceus Dora, again, 10 people played it, 2 made day 2, showing a good conversion rate, but not a lot of people played it, so the sample size is not large enough for me to say that these are significant, which is why they're yellow. They're great conversion rates, but they're not very significant. So the ones I would look at are Giratina Comfy and Lost Box Sablezard are low success rates due to the difficulty of piloting the deck and the difficulty of building the deck correctly for the metagame. Reggie is high because it was a great meta call. Arceus Gujra is high because it was a great meta call, because it's good against Palkia and it's good against Lost Box Zard. And then Palkia is just the best deck in format, so it performed like it did. Mew VMAX is really good, so it got 11%. Arceus Giratina, I guess it has some raw power and consistency to it, so it got 11%. Zoroark V-Star, it's... Zoroark V-Star is bad against Palkia and Teleon, and the top 8 list is better against Lost Box Zard, but I'm still not convinced that it's a great matchup. So Zoroark V-Star, it had its tournament. Sometimes these things happen. I don't think it'll have its tournament again in SLC, but that's just my opinion. Now, this is something I don't think you'll see elsewhere, is that I'm breaking it down based on the type of deck. So let's zoom in a little bit here and scroll over to this. Everybody can look at the metagame in this way, right? Because we were given that information, but you can organize this data in any way you choose. You can organize it by which decks are using Arceus. Well, 16% of the field was using Arceus V-Star. How much of the field was using Comfy? About 22% of the field was using Comfy. How much of the field was using Palkia V-Star as a part of their deck? About 26% of the field. That means over more than 1 in 4 times you would play against a Palkia deck. You can pick apart the data and look at it this way to see which kinds of things you want to counter. So if you want to counter Palkia decks, that's a great choice because it's 26% of the field in Peoria. But then you have to ask yourself, how much do you think this will change? So you put in your estimated choices for the percentages. So let's say we wanted to change this, to start changing the sheet to what we think it'll look like in SLC. So we go ahead and duplicate this sheet. Now this is copy of sheet 1. So we'll start making it for how we want it to look for SLC. So we can just scrape all of the functions out of here. We'll just backspace it and say Curum. We think Curum's going to go down to 10%, but we think Palkia is going to go up to 15%, and and so on and so forth, and then re-add up the percentages over here to see what you're going to get. We'll delete that real quick. Okay, so yeah, so I think organizing the data in different ways and seeing if there's anything you can take advantage of, like this high percentage of Palkia decks or this high percentage of Comfy decks, instead of just looking at these decks divided by their archetype, you can look at them by the engine they use, or by similar strategies they use, or similar things that they're weak to. This is how you level up your metagaming skills. And then here I just wanted to show, for those that take in information better from pictures, this is what the day 1 field looked like. So about half of the field was taken up by Curum, Tina, Mew, and Palkia. And then a little bit, just over half was taken up by these if we also include Lost Box Sablezard into it. And then if we look at day 2 on a pie chart, Palkia and Teleon was 1/5 of day 2, and Reggie, Curum, Mew made up the rest of the first half of it. So these can be really interesting things to see. And I'm going to put a link to this whole Google sheet with the pictures as well in them. So you guys can go ahead and do file, make a copy, and make your own sheet. And you can edit it in any ways you want and do your own things with the data. There are functions in here. So just delete all of them if you don't want to use the functions. And then you can just type in your own numbers and stuff. So yeah, if you have any questions about any of this, let me know. Join the Discord, get the discussion going. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to the channel for daily Pokemon TCG content. I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.